Hi, and welcome to Prepping Essentials.
Good morning, it's 7:30 on Saturday the 26th of September. Just making my way down to land on what is a chilly morning this morning. As always, not quite sure what we're going to get done today, but let's find out. Well, here we are, down on the land. It's a balmy 6 degrees centigrade. I think that's, I don't know, 42 degrees Fahrenheit for our American cousins. And it's been a cool, wet, windy week. The last 2 days particularly, it's been storm force winds. And I must admit I did flick the CCTV on a few times during the week just to make sure that the polytunnel was still there. Thankfully, a bit of rain was well needed for the outside plants, but having popped down to do the polytunnel a couple of times during the week, there is a bit of news for the outside plants in the raised beds, but we'll get to that shortly. For now, I'm going to get into the cabin, get opened up, and there'll definitely be a need for a fire on this morning. It is pretty cool and I certainly want to get a cup of coffee on the go. So let me get myself sorted out and then we'll catch up with the usual news about the garden. Well, first things first, as usual, got the polytunnel opened up. I've popped a little fire on because it is cool. We'll have a little run around the outside first, and then we can get out of this wind, which is a bit chilly. This little mixed bed of pumpkin and squash. We've slowly got the odd new pumpkin coming and squash coming, but still not an awful lot on here. There is a pumpkin buried here, which is about hand size, just over. I don't think that's going to last long because the plant seems to be dying off, so I think that's just going to be about as far as that one's going to go. There's another one buried behind here, a bit bigger than hand size. It was nibbled at by the rabbits earlier. Lots of growth coming out still, but not producing anything. Lots of flowers and not a lot of fruit, I'm afraid. But that's that one. Jerusalem artichokes, don't know what to say about those. I might have a little experimental lift shortly of those and see what's going on with the tubers underneath. I'll carry on with the outside, then we can get in. These potatoes doing very, very well actually. I am quite surprised, especially now the weather's cooled down, but they're certainly well on the way. The other two barrels I planted some little cauliflower seedlings which are hanging in there despite the best efforts of weather and rabbits, and we'll come to rabbits in a minute. This first raised bed beetroot's about ready to lift, I think. There's some quite sizable ones buried in there, but I don't know if you remember, I planted out a lot of cauliflower. Now they were here until Tuesday, and I noticed on Tuesday a few had been nibbled. Came back on Thursday and as you can see, completely empty. So something's been in there and just eaten them. The middle raised bed, they've not managed to get in there and eat those. They are still hanging in there. So you never know if these frosts will stay away. I might actually get some plants out of there. Garlic doing well, those little couple of onions doing well. Last raised bed, I lifted carrots last week, you'll remember. Still got 6 buckets of carrots, 7 buckets. Well, you can't really call that one a bucket because it's only got about 3 plants in it. But they're doing well still. I'll not lift any this week, but I might lift this end one here next weekend or perhaps during the week. And then the onions, they're starting to fall over now, so to me that kind of tells me that they're about ready. Squash, we have got some small squash coming, lots of flowers still coming, just not a lot of squash. There's one little one down there. I'm sure there's another one somewhere around here. It's knowing where they are, I keep forgetting. Oh, there's one there, small one. I was convinced that there was one round here somewhere. Maybe I was dreaming or wishing. But really we've only got the one big one, which is buried under here, and which the rabbits have had a go at. Pumpkin bed, we've got one here which is just slightly bigger than a hand size. We've got another little one buried in here, which the rabbits have had a chew at. There's a bigger one. I think that was the first one to come, which is well bigger than hand size, almost 2 hand size. And then this one which keeps getting nibbled at. So pumpkin squash, can't say that's doing great. The little cauliflowers are hanging in. I might lift one of these beetroots today just to see how big it is. And then the disaster of the planting of the cauliflowers in this bed. But as always, it's a learning experience, see what works and what doesn't. I am tempted to get in there with that fire because it is pretty cool outside. Polytunnel, fig tree, actually is still putting on new growth, which is quite amazing, with that one little fig tucked away there. Tomato forest, not doing a lot now apart from flowering. There was a couple of little red tomatoes I picked during the week, but disappointing really this year. But it was my first year at trying these, so there are some lessons learned from that. That watering system's been doing real well. I've been coming down, but really I've not been coming to water, I've been coming to top up the water in that tank. Because since I put that bigger, more high pressure pump on, it's like clockwork. It is doing what it's supposed to do. Bit random. I don't know if you remember or not, I planted a couple of cuttings from an elderberry tree. Wrong time of the year completely to be doing that, but I did pop 3 little twigs into these buckets, and the good news is one of them has sprouted. The other 2 haven't. I suspect that they're completely dead. I'll leave them for a while just in case they do root, but yeah, this one's actually sprouted. Bit of an experiment just to see. Blueberry bush, staggering growth on there. I am going to have to trim these at some point before winter proper sets in. Cucumbers, we are still getting cucumbers, believe it or not. They are still putting out new ones. There's one there. There's another little baby one down there. There's a big one there. I think that one's just died on the vine, so I'll get rid of that. There's another one here. So they are still producing, which is quite surprising, as are the peas. We've got some peas there. We've got some more here. So it is producing, which is quite surprising. And this little plant here is putting on a proper spurt of growth, which is really quite surprising. I'm going to leave those and see what they do because they are still, as you can see, producing peas. Strawberries, very nice collection now for next year, and again the big blueberry bush actually is still putting on some fresh new growth, which is a little bit surprising because the temperatures have dropped quite significantly. And again, this is going to want a bit of a prune as we head towards winter. So that's the polytunnel. Not a lot going on now, and at some point I'm going to have to decide what to do with these tomatoes. They are going to have to come out at some point. It's just a shame with so many flowers that I've not ended up with more fruit, but as I keep saying, it is a learning curve. I'll top that little water tank up because I can see from here it's half empty, and then I'll get myself into the cabin and have a little think about what I'm going to do today. But weather-wise, it's not great. If the sun does manage to make an appearance, I might be tempted to get Little Red Tractor out and cut a bit of grass up this side by the woodland. I am praying that it stops growing, because with this weather getting wetter and wetter, I don't really want to be running around cutting grass much longer. It'll just chew the field up. Plus, of course, it's bloody cold. So anyway, enough talking. I think I might just close down that polytunnel after I've topped the water tank up, because this wind is still picking up. And if it's anything like yesterday, the tunnel will definitely take off in this wind, because the last couple of days has been immense in terms of the force of the wind. So I'll get that tank topped up and then I'll see you back in the cabin. Oh, hang on a minute. Magpies and crows having a battle. There's always something going on. Well, I've just popped the Little Red Tractor out, just on the off chance that I might be able to get some of this grass cut, but it is a bit wet, so I'll give it a little test drive just to see how well it cuts. But I suspect it's not going to cut very well, because underfoot this is definitely wet. But at least it's having a little run just to keep it ticking over, because it does sit here for quite a long time without being run. So it's always nice to just get the engine warmed up and make sure that everything is okay with it. At some point I am going to have to change those bolts or nuts on those wheels, but I doubt that's going to happen today because it's damned chilly. Well, I've had a quick run round with the Little Red Tractor on this end nearest the cabin, and to be fair, it is cutting, but it is wet. You can see probably on the floor where it's, I mean, that tractor's not that heavy, but it is just starting to chew up the grass a little bit. But as I said, it's picking it up, and to be fair, there isn't a lot to pick up because it is still quite short. But I guess you know me by now. I am a little bit obsessed with this grass, and I do not want it to get out of control over winter. So I don't know, I'll maybe have a little cup of coffee and a warm up in the cabin, because it is damned cold in this wind, and see if it dries out a little bit more. If it does, I'll give it a go cutting. If it doesn't, then I'll just give it up for today. Well, it's certainly the day to have the fire on today. I lit this when I first turned up, and I've got a nice little fire going. It's surprising how much difference it makes actually to the cabin. Even with the door open, because outside it's 6 degrees and falling, and that wind, I suspect it's actually a lot lower than 6 degrees. Well, it's certainly cool today out there. I've got my cup of coffee. I'll have a little run around with the little red tractor. So I just thought I'd have 5 minutes, see how you're all doing. Here in the UK, we're now into our second lockdown, in all but name. They've locked down various regions and put, not curfews as such, but they've closed pubs, bars, restaurants, cafes, coffee shops from a certain time at night. So after 10 o'clock, everything was shut down. We were restricted into how many people can mix. We're down to 6. Some places that includes kids, other places it doesn't. But yeah, we're certainly into another second wave lockdown here in the UK. Which, if you've seen some of the kind of community posts I've put on YouTube, or indeed on Facebook, you'll have also seen that the panic is setting in the supermarkets. They've brought back their COVID marshals, and just bear with me a second, because that door, the wind has changed, and I'm now starting to get the wind blowing in the cabin. And I'm conscious that you probably won't be able to hear me because I've got no lapel mic on today. I don't know what's up with that. I noticed that it was making a crackling noise on some of the videos, so I'm not using it. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, supermarkets. Some of them have brought in their little COVID marshals outside, making sure that people are wearing masks and keeping the social distance. Others have brought in restrictions on how much of certain items you can buy. We've already seen the famous toilet roll stockpiling begin again in earnest. But to be fair, where I am, my nose is running. Which tells you how cold it is. Where I am, to be fair, I did pop in on the way home from work last night just to have a look and see how crazy it was or it wasn't. And to be fair, it wasn't too bad. Yes, fresh vegetables, there wasn't a great selection available. People had clearly been in during the day. Rice and pasta. Pasta was a bit thin on the ground. Rice, I can't say that I noticed any real shortages. I guess it depends what kind it is that you were buying or wanting to buy, because some items were empty on the shelves, but the basic packs of rice were still there. Long life milk, that was in short supply. Tinned meat wasn't in short supply, there was still good availability, but I have noticed over the last, well, since COVID started really, back in February, March time, prices have gone up, particularly for tinned meat. Now whether that's indicative of a shortage, I don't know. Certainly looking at YouTube channels for our American cousins, they've been saying for a while that prices have gone through the roof, and that for tinned goods there has been some shortages, and there's lots of discussion on different channels as to whether that's due to COVID disrupting the manufacturing process in the meat plants or the canning vegetable plants, or whether it's actually a shortage of the raw material to make the cans themselves. So lots of, I wouldn't say conspiracy because it's not, it's fact, but lots of different suggestions as to why there might be shortages and why there might be sudden rises of pricing. On the unemployment front, again, here in the UK, unemployment is continuing to rise. In order to try and stem the flow, the government is bringing in a second version of the job support package that it brought in at the start of COVID. Less generous this time, it has to be said. They're paying, I think, up to 2/3 of a wage, depending on how many hours are being worked by that individual. But they can see really that the writing's on the wall, and they're just kind of prolonging the agony, really. I think most people, certainly anybody who's paying attention to it, will have realised by now that many of the businesses that were being supported by, it's called furlough here in the UK, the government's job support initiative, they've been sat at home with the government paying 80% of the wage for the last, must be 6 months now. I think everybody's realising that a lot of those jobs are there just in name only. They're only there because the government is paying the wage, and once that stops, the job itself will stop. So to try and prevent a sudden massive surge in unemployment, the government's really had no option but to bring in this second job support scheme. But I think as we go into Christmas and certainly in the new year, even though that support scheme has been put in for 6 months, which will take it up to March time, you're going to see a lot of companies closing way before then. So yeah, unemployment rather than COVID itself is going to be the big killer. And also, of course, if the companies are no longer there, then the tax revenue from those companies is no longer going to be there either. So definitely a crisis looming, economic crisis looming as we head through this year and into next. How's everyone doing across in the UK, the US? I keep looking at the news reporting. It is quite tragic, the degree of civil unrest, particularly seeing policemen ambushed in the street and shot in one city in the US. But having said that, literally yesterday here in the UK, we had a policeman shot. Not quite the same circumstances. It wasn't a big civil disorder thing. It was more of a, and I don't mean this in an unkind way, but it was a failure to follow process. Essentially, a guy was arrested on the street and found to be in possession of drugs and some ammunition. I mean, that should have sent some alarm bells ringing. And unfortunately, it would seem that he wasn't searched properly. And when he was taken into the police custody area at the police station, he managed to produce a weapon and shot himself, which is no big sadness. But the real sadness is he'd managed to shoot a policeman, and that policeman died. So a lot of civil unrest, crime, general non-compliance, if you like, not just in the US and the UK, but you're seeing it in several countries around the world. So we're in uncertain and unsettling times right now. Yes, COVID has brought a lot of those, but it's also brought out the worst in people, which kind of reinforces something I've said in many videos. Whenever there's a crisis, and indeed sometimes when there's not a crisis and it's normal real life, people are, or can be, our worst enemies, and the majority of problems that we are going to encounter are actually created by those people. Anyway, enough doom and gloom. Just raising these issues as a way of perpetuating the message of being prepared for any eventuality that might come your way. But yes, particularly with COVID, and the effects, the knock-on effects of COVID with the decline in the economy and the decline in civil standards, shall we say. Definitely something to be keeping a very close eye on as we head through winter and into the new year. Down here in the cabin on the land, bit of a slow day today. Certainly a cold day. I don't know if you can see me hugging my coffee cup on the video, trying to keep my hands warm. I've been outside for quite a while without gloves on. They do get in the way of a lot of the stuff that I do outside. So I am my own worst enemy when it comes to hands. I do prefer to be able to feel things without trying to feel or fumble through the gloves. Polytunnel is getting towards the end of its useful life, in its current form anyway. Raised beds, we're going to have to just see what happens with those. Assuming that the rabbits don't get the main centre bed, I am a little bit hopeful I'm going to see those cauliflowers through to some kind of harvest. I've been having a little look around the cabin. I do have some time off due to me over the next month or so, and I am busy measuring up, trying to figure out where to put polytunnel version 2, and I think I'm coming to the conclusion that it is going to be some kind of timber frame construction rather than the hooped metal frame polytunnel standard design. More of a greenhouse than a polytunnel, and the more I think about it, the more inclined I am to tag it onto the back end of the cabin here by the door. Few reasons for that. I guess uppermost in my mind is wind. You'll have seen today in the video, if I go on to the front of the cabin at this side, which looks out over the polytunnel, that is where the majority of the wind does come from, and quite strong as well. So the cabin itself here would provide a buffer, some shelter for the polytunnel too, if I do put it out the back here by the back door. Second reason, or my thinking behind it, is the amount of sun that it gets, direct sunlight. That front of the cabin, it does face south-southwest, so for the majority of the day it is in full direct sun. And I've noticed in the polytunnel, and you'll have noticed in my previous videos, a lot of scorching on the plants. They were just getting too hot, too much direct sun, and that was causing issues both with watering and maintaining sufficient water for them. But they were also overheating. I mean, you would have seen on the cucumbers, the peas, and to a lesser extent on the tomatoes, the yellowing and then the browning and scorching of the leaves. And certainly in terms of the peas, it just killed them stone dead. They just went all crispy. So the thinking is, if I put it out on the back of the cabin, which is northeast facing, they would be out of that direct sun for the majority of the day. They'll get it kind of early hours of the morning up until about 11 o'clock, and then as the sun moves around the sky, I'll get a bit of a shadowing effect from the cabin, which hopefully will lower the temperature and certainly will stop that direct, just incessant sun that was causing that scorching. So I'm busy measuring up. I've done a little bit of measuring up today. I'll do some more later on before I go home, just to figure out exactly how it's going to attach to the back of the cabin, how much timber I'm going to need, and of course how much of the plastic sheeting I'm going to need. And the theory is I'll use the same as I've got on the roof here, that corrugated plastic for the sides and for the roof, and then just frame in some kind of wooden door. It'll also help in winter time for the cabin itself, because the door off the cabin here, as I say, is northeast facing. So as the wind shifts in winter and we start getting the very cold air coming from the north, it'll provide a little bit of shelter for the cabin itself, and certainly protection for the door to the cabin, which at the moment does get the full force of the northerly winds. And I'm just looking now, I can see daylight around it. So it should serve a secondary purpose. It should maintain a little bit of warmer temperature on that northern side, so help to maintain a livable temperature inside the cabin during the winter months. So a bit of protection from there. The original cabin is massively insulated, so that shouldn't be an issue. And of course I've got the wood burner here as well. So fingers crossed, winter time shouldn't be unbearably cold inside the cabin, but I guess you'll find out in future videos. Anyway, I need to get back to work. I'm still in two minds as to whether or not to run up the woodland side of the field with the little red tractor, just see how much cut can be achieved. I don't think there'll be a great deal because it is still quite short. I might even have a little walk around the woodland just to show you how everything's developing in there, because as we're into autumn now, I've noticed that everything is dying back. Certainly the trees are, leaves are falling, berries are pretty much picked bare by the birds, certainly blackberries are. So I might have a little look at that as well with you before we finish for the day. If I do cut the grass, I'll let you know. If I don't, then no doubt you'll catch me either tomorrow or in successive videos through the week. But wherever you are, stay safe and stay away from people, not just because of COVID. Not sure what kind of bird that is. It's some kind of buzzard or hawk. Just hovering over the field. Beautiful, beautiful bird. Just hovering over the trees. How nice is that? I wish he'd stay still. And he's gone. Can't get close enough, unfortunately. Beautiful, just watching them. Not beautiful watching those dark clouds coming over though. I think the rain is coming. Well, I've done this little back bit before I had my coffee, and I couldn't resist just trying it along the edge of the wood. But I thought I'd have a quick walk up there with you. You can see how the tractor's cut on this grass, but also more importantly, I guess you can see the wooded area. It is starting to look a little bit thin now. Autumn is definitely here. In fact, it's heading towards winter. Blackberry bushes are all died back. A lot of fruit on those, and a lot of it unfortunately has kind of gone to waste. It is still putting out some new fruit, but most of it's gone now. And to be fair, pretty much all of the trees are getting into winter mode. This rosehip bush, I must investigate this, because you can do a lot with rosehips. You can make different kinds of syrups and allegedly jams and jellies, but I'm not quite sure. It's not something that I've done before. And I do keep saying this, it is all a learning curve. And it is trying to find out what's edible and what isn't in the woodland, but you can see there it's all dying back. This is where I've been, you can see, with a little red tractor. I just ran around the edge here, just a single cut all the way up the edge of the woodland, and There's not a lot of grass because I've done a good job so far of keeping on top of it, but I do like to keep having a go when I can. I am conscious that the weather is closing in, but to be fair, it's not looking too bad from the other week. It is still quite short. It's only in little patches. Anyway, back to the woodland. You can see it is dying back. Had lots and lots of elderberries this year. I am keen though to try and get some new trees, because a lot of these, you can see that one there, they're really old and quite past it. A lot of them are just breaking off the branches. But it is nice to have a little walk along this edge and just see what is and isn't in there. Certainly no shortage of blackberries all the way up here. I think this is a sycamore tree putting out little seed pods. I do get a lot of broken branches though. These trees are old, and you can see probably on the floor here the wind does break off a lot of branches, some of them quite substantial branches as well. Hawthorn bushes all in berry. At least the birds have got something to eat. It'll soon be time to start putting out my feeder again, just to keep them going through the winter. There's some more branches here. That's quite a sizable one, that one. Just pop that there. I don't want to run over that with the tractor. You can see some of them are really quite thick. In fact, there's some there that's broken down. Really big branches from these trees. Anyway, there's my little tour down the woodland side. Not sure whether to bother with the tractor or not, to be honest. It is still quite short up here. Maybe around that middle section could do with a little bit of a trim, but all in all it is quite under control still, which is nice. Let's get rid of some more of these big branches. I don't want to go over those with the tractor. That's a huge branch, that's broken off these trees. Anyway, back down to the cabin. I'll have a little think whether I do or I don't want to run around with the tractor. But looking at that sky, rain is coming, and looking at the trees, so is the wind. I've just noticed this actually on the feeder. That is a huge branch that's come down. Really huge branch from this tree. In fact, you can see up there where it's broken off. You can see, don't know whether you can or you can't. Just there. So that branch, I'm going to struggle to lift that, to be honest. I don't know how I missed it when I was driving round with the tractor just now, but I was more looking at the field than I was the branches. I'm going to have a little go now and see if I can move that. It's absolutely enormous. Enormous branch. Lots of debris here. It's clearly... There's another one there, look. Had a punishing. That's a big branch. Right, I can't do this with one hand on the camera and one hand on the branch. I'm going to have to put you down while I tackle that. It's almost a tree in itself, that. Well, that's the wildlife feeder cleared of those branches. There's quite a few still up there that have broken off but haven't actually fallen. They've been trapped in the canopy. This one here is a dead branch. But awful lot that I've moved. I mean, look at this. All of this running all the way down is all limbs that have broken off and ended up in my field. And in that one there, that's got to be 25 feet long, maybe more. Damned heavy, I know that. Because if I can get my hand in there, and you can see how it's the thickness of my hand the actual branch that's come off. I can't get my hand around it. Huge and heavy, but it's back in the wood. Right, I definitely am going back to the cabin now. There's a couple more branches there that I've thrown over. Not as big, but plenty of them. Yeah, so I'm worn out now, humping all that around. I'll go check on the fire, and it might be time for another coffee. It's taken me ages to clear those branches away. Well, I think you know me well enough. I just couldn't resist running down this side of the field by the wood, so I've done all of that. It is a little bit tough going because it is still wet, but it is picked it up. It's damned cold though. My hands are in this wind, my hands and my nose are certainly feeling the chill. I've just literally parked up with the tractor to empty the grass, but I think that's about it for today in terms of grass cutting. I am surprised I've been able to pick it up, but I have, so I'll get that chucked on the compost heap with the little bit I did earlier, and then I'll get the little tractor put away, bless it. It's been a bit of a shock, I think, to the system today, running over this wet grass, but it's done a nice job, and that's what counts. Well, I just couldn't resist emptying a little pot of carrots. Not as many in this one, but some really nice sized ones. You can see the size of my hand. Very nice ones. Debating with these onions because they're starting to fall over, so I'll maybe just pull that middle one and see what we've got. Yeah, they're not huge. Nice enough, but not huge. So I think I might just leave those for a little while, see if they grow a little bit bigger. But in terms of carrots this year, I've done really well. Really well indeed. Very pleased with those.
Well, that's it for this video. Short but sweet, and so short in fact I didn't do the normal video clip to close, but you know where it is. Closing the cabin up. If you did like the video, please do click on the like button. Also feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. As always, welcome any comments, questions or suggestions you might have. What to do about those rabbits eating my cauliflowers? Let me know in the comments section below. But for now, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.